Welcome to Overnight Wisdom, a show where we sit with changemakers, artists, business leaders, and thinkers. Each conversation is an invitation to slow down, to go deeper, and unearth the quiet insights that shape who we are. If you're seeking honest reflections, unexpected wisdom, and a deeper understanding of what it takes to not merely survive, but to thrive, you're in the right place. There are voices that teach, there are voices that challenge, and then there are voices that change the way we see the world. Today, we sit with Joy Mbakwe, a teacher, cultural advocate, and digital storyteller whose life's work is devoted to creating spaces where all children can thrive. Joy speaks with a kind of clarity that comes from living at the intersection of worlds. She was raised with a rhythm of Igbo culture and the structure of British society, and she carries both as she navigates the realities of race, identity, and belonging. Joy does not flinch from hard truths. She names what many prefer to leave unsaid. The silent ways schools fail Black children, the emotional weight of online visibility, and the unrelenting balance of survival and self-care. Her voice is both bold and tender, shaped by the deep love of a mother and the unshakable resolve of an educator who knows her calling. In this conversation, Joy takes us into the heart of her journey, what it means to be born Black, to speak truth in spaces that resist it, and to raise children with courage in a world that often misunderstands them. This is a story of teaching, of mothering, of advocacy, and of living fully in one's purpose. Let's get into it. Hi, Joy. How are you
Hello.
doing?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thanks for being here with me. Really appreciate your time. Okay, so I'm jumping right in. You've rooted your journey in classrooms. You shape lives as a speaker, you shape lives as a teacher, you shape lives also in social media with how you communicate and what you put forth. How did your role in education ignite this commitment to social justice? Because I see that's kind of like a
Sure.
connecting thread through your work. And what was the springboard for your work in anti-racism?
Sure. So I think I started teaching 10 years ago. And when I first started teaching, I didn't really have a view of justice explicit in the classroom. I used to write plays, and there was a theme. There was a theme around exploring what it meant to be Nigerian, what it meant to be British, what it meant to advocate for others, what it meant to help other people. But I didn't bring that into the classroom. That came much later. But I'm an English teacher, by the way, that's what I do. That was my bread and butter. And I'm encountering these texts, which were meant to view in this kind of through this colorblind lens. But very bad things were happening to the Black people. Very bad things were happening to the women. I remember a specific text that we looked at, and there was a remark made about a girl from another girl that was colorist, but no one else in the department saw it in that way. And then I realized there's a unique way that I read these texts that's informed by who I am. And so I was always teaching in an anti-racist and anti-sexist way, in a way that included as many people as possible, but I didn't have the language for it. It was intentional in the sense that I knew that it was important that we speak about what's happening to this character in the different intersections of their identity, which led to that treatment. But I didn't have the words for it. The words came in 2020 after George Floyd was murdered, and I didn't want to go and march. Not because I couldn't. I felt very claustrophobic, and I'm not sure if it's because of the isolation and the pandemic and the fact that we were meant to be indoors and we had been indoors for so much time at that point. I think it's also because I felt that this was something I'd been tussling with for years. Ever since the murder of Trayvon Martin, I just felt like there is an injustice that is existing. The term now woke has been abused, but at the time, I became aware, I became conscious. And so in real time, I was watching everybody else become conscious, and I didn't have anywhere else to go. And online, because it was the pandemic, you're scrolling, but I couldn't escape from these people putting up black squares. I couldn't escape from the reality that my black skin meant that my life was going to be different. and wouldn't be valued in the same way. And so I didn't march. But what I did instead is I said, what do I have in my hands? Who am I in front of? I'm in front of these children. And I believe that's the moment where everything changed. That's when I couldn't be silent. I couldn't be passive. I couldn't not have the name for the thing that I wanted to do.
Thanks for sharing. That also resonates for me. I
Mm,
remember in 2020 just feeling like I was unraveling. I
mm,
felt like there was so much I had swept under the carpet
sure.
that I had to unearth. And it was an interesting period for me, anyways, the way I navigated that time. I just had a kid.
Okay.
And I remember letting go a lot of friends in that period
Okay.
because I was just like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I need to figure out what is happening with me. And a lot of those friends were white friends,
Okay.
just I was processing a different kind of grief. So it's interesting to hear how that experience was for you.
Mm.
Different, but definitely resonates. And I'd love to hear more about that. How did you bring your work then into the classroom? What was the shift?
It's so interesting. It reminds me of our conversation last week where you said something and I want to find out what did it mean? How did it feel to get rid of these friends and how do you feel now? But let me focus on the question. Please, could you repeat it for me? I'm getting carried away.
The question was just a follow up on what you said. You started to think that you could instead make an impact in the classroom. How did that happen? Like, how did you do it?
So at the time, I was head of Key Stage 3. So that's in charge of the curriculum for 11 years old to 14 years old. And so I didn't have much power, but I did have some power in that I was able to start to create resources that would speak to what was happening in real time. You have to remember also I was teaching online. And so the curriculum that we'd had
Mm,
had been thrown out the window. You had all of these stock lessons that you were just meant to follow and teach, but that had already been placed to the side. We were already creating resources every single week. And so what I could do is think about what was happening in the news, watch it, think about what is my way in, what's the article that we can analyze, what's the short story that we can read that can bring what is happening out there into the space, into our home, so that we can all learn about how to create a better world in the future.
I mean, I can't imagine the responsibility of having to navigate for
Sure.
yourself that period in time and then
Yeah.
having to bring it into the classroom and
Mm.
teach it in a way that sits in their mind.
Mm. I think you find that often as a Black person speaking about the plight of Black people in front of
Mm,
Black students. There's this
mm,
doubling, there's a compounding trauma that's happening because the thing that we're reading about is the thing that we live.
mhm.
And so you have to get used to just holding these two really weighty things that I cannot stay silent, but also this is about me. I remember once I was in training and they were speaking about the statistics that pertain to Black women and the likelihood of their success in the UK. I just thought to myself, I know that you are trying to help me here. I know you're trying to educate people about what the realities are, but this is just highlighting how many barriers I have had to overcome to get here. I don't want to
Mm,
come to work to be reminded of my struggle. I just want to
mm.
work.
Hmm.
But if we don't allow for these conversations to happen, then people can't grow, people can't learn. And so you have to learn how to hold yourself together, especially publicly, especially where the white gaze is present. You have to learn. And we've learned how to do that to make sure that we can persist and resist and keep things going. It's hard.
Mm, mm, yeah, yeah. It that resonates because I'm thinking about sometimes people ask me, some of the conversations I have publicly or when I have to navigate racism or ignorance and how I do it calmly. And I
Mm,
think the alternative, I don't want to see the alternative, and they
yeah,
don't want to see the alternative,
exactly. Exactly.
and
There is, we can't live that way. But what
no.
a burden to carry. What a
Mhm,
fight to have to be at the front line of. And I was reading a book the other day where it's like some Black people, African people, they opt out of the fight. And I understand why. Because to survive is not to do this work. To survive is to remain silent and to keep your privilege intact and just to
mm,
be as small as possible so that they know that you are not quite like them, but you aren't
mm,
saying anything that reminds them constantly. But this
mm,
conversation is a reminder, oh, you are not like us. Where
yeah.
do we go from here?
Do you sometimes wish that you did not care as much as you did and you didn't have to do this work?
Of course. Of course. I wish that there was a world where this wasn't even part of the conversation. I know people
Mm,
often have the view that the way to stop racism is to stop speaking about it, but that couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
I wish that I didn't care about this work so much, which is why if you're a friend of mine and you try and have these kind of conversations with me on the weekend, I will just stare at you blankly because I
Mm,
don't want to engage in this work outside. I have to put boundaries in place. Okay, Monday to Friday, this is the work that I do. I'm okay to show up. But on the weekends, I want to read fiction. I want to read for
mm,
pleasure. I don't want to read to be
mm,
able to teach people about the oppressive works
mm.
at play. And I think that I can give myself that. I think there's
Yes.
the podcast that you shared about Black women just being able to rest and knowing
Mm,
the point at which it's okay to say, actually, I feel that, but I've had that conversation. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet.
mm,
But
mm,
it's a burden to carry, and I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair
mm.
that we have to carry it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely not. I want to ask you about navigating blackness and
Okay.
also this Nigerian identity. And I think something we have in common is we don't just see ourselves as black people or black women. I'm also very much a Nigerian woman and
Yeah.
I stand in that. And I know it's the same for you. So my question is, in spaces where blackness is often homogenized, how has your Nigerian identity been a source of nuance, privilege, and belonging? I want to start there.
It's a privilege, isn't it? It's a
It is.
privilege to
It
have
is.
this confidence. I don't know if it's given to us or it's born. It's in us. You know, I don't stutter when I speak. I'm not
Mm,
afraid of the sound of my voice.
mm,
I don't apologize for what I have to say. I don't have that. There are so many things that have been given to me. This emphasis on education and excellence. This sense of you don't have to wait for people to welcome you to feel as though you belong. This
mm,
training for corporate life, actually, we are not raised, we are trained. There's a
mm.
difference. I'm not, you know, when we speak in the West, we say, oh, I'm raising my children. In back home, we say we're training our children. I've trained
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
These words are very important here because what is I'm
Mm,
training you for life. And I definitely believe in the way that I was raised prepared me for corporate life in a way that maybe my counterparts weren't prepared. I think there are so many privileges, and I think it's such a shame that oftentimes where we are from is viewed through this lens of deficit.
yeah.
But I think it's certainly a privilege. It means that we can I can then bring a confidence that perhaps we haven't seen before, but also in the work that I do online, especially, is give the older generations or generations, my peers, the language that they understand, but the culture that they need to feel safe when we are discussing things like parenting. If I didn't look the way
Mm,
I looked and I was speaking about our parenting styles, it
mm,
wouldn't be received well. But I think that because although I sound different, I know, I know you know me. You hear my surname, I know you. Okay, what do you have to
mm,
say to me? And then we can
mm,
begin to expand and learn together as well.
mm. Thanks for sharing that. I'm wondering, in what ways do you leverage that duality? So, outside of, say, in engaging with other Africans or other Nigerians, how do you leverage that across racial and cultural context? And I will, just to specify this a bit
Please.
more, I think growing up in the US, I always had the mentality that if you work hard enough, it doesn't matter, it's irrelevant, you're still going
Mm,
to
mm,
first in class, you're going to get the job, you're going to do whatever it is you need to. And I think that's very much a Nigerian mentality, because I am supposed to
mm,
just be great,
sure.
right? So there is no system or structure that can get in the way of that. And that was always my way of thinking. And then I had to unlearn that while this works for me as a Nigerian who's actively accepted that this is my reality, I shape my world, I had to recognize that for other people, other Black people, they don't
Sure.
quite feel the same. And sometimes I centered myself and
Sure.
minimized their
Of
experience.
course.
And this is something I had to unlearn. And now I can say, yes, for me, this is, and for somebody else it might be. So I'm thinking that for you, especially as an educator, where you see kids who come from all walks of life,
Of
they have
course.
different experiences. How do you
Yeah.
navigate that?
It's hard. It's hard
Mm,
because the fact that we are here, we have privilege, we have some privileges. And people hearing us will say, I remember when somebody online said to me, oh, what are you complaining about, you rich uni student, or something to that effect. He doesn't know anything about me, but he's hearing the way that I'm speaking. He's saying, actually, you have more privilege than I do. And so I have to account for the class privileges that I've experienced.
mm,
I also have to bring into the conversation that some people become Black and some people are born Black. And so when I speak to especially older generations, people who migrated here, you were not black until you got here. And so you don't really understand this idea that your skin color could be a barrier to success. Especially some of my friends when they've moved to the UK, when I first encountered them, they're just kind of like, what's all this racism thing you're talking? Please just work hard, focus on the real focus on what is important, and it's not racism. You know, those kind the rhetoric that you'd hear from some white people, you hear it from some Africans, some Nigerians, like, well, you guys are just making excuses, you guys are sensitive, stop being a victim. You hear that. And then they experience what it means to live in certain spaces and certain places. And then they understand, oh, actually, I'm being defined by a label that I did not even place on myself 5 years ago, 2 years ago, last year. And being aware of that, I think I'm in a really unique position in that I have a really strong connection to what it means to be Igbo, what it means to be Nigerian. And I love that. But I wasn't born there. I didn't grow up there. I have always been Black. But my parents didn't tell me I was Black. They told me I was Igbo. It's only when I went to school that I understood, oh, to be Black isn't necessarily positive. It was always surprising to me when my teachers would tell me that a B grade was sufficient. But I would go home and my dad would say, why, what is this grade in front of me? Were you not listening in class? And so because I sit in this unique intersection where I understand what it means to be both Black and African, I then can really speak to the unique experiences, not as intimately as someone else who shares this identity, but it means that I don't say to somebody, oh, what's all this race talk you're talking about? Get over it. Stop making excuses. And I don't negate, actually just work hard. Work hard. Are you reading your book well? What's the problem? All right, we're doing both.
I love that. I grapple with this sometimes where I know who I am, and that's written in stone.
Mm-hmm.
But I also reflect on until you talk to me and you know who I am, I'm just another Black person for whose ever gaze. And it's interesting navigating those experiences. So, for example, I run a company and some of my employees are white. And it's interesting sometimes walking into meetings or joining digitally where the people on the other end and you see just how stunned they are in realizing that I'm at the top of the company. And it's interesting navigating that space where I do have privilege. At some point you're like, oh shit, excuse my French, they they're like, oh, this Black girl owns shit.
Yeah.
But I think having experienced racism, it's interesting how that can shred you. And if I did not have that privilege and the
Yes.
foundation of
Yes.
my Nigerianness,
Of
I'm not
course.
sure how that
You
would
can't
affect me to
survive.
this day.
Yep. It
Yeah,
breaks you down.
it does.
I remember last year I was sick and I was in hospital quite often. I remember when I was trying to advocate for myself, they weren't taking me seriously. I was thinking to myself, what's going on here?
Mm.
Because I'm actually quite a serious person, first of all. I don't take things like, especially not my health. I'm sick. So we're not making jokes. That's the first thing. Secondly, other people take me seriously. I don't just lead departments. I lead children. I lead people around me. I've been a leader since I was 14, 15. People take me seriously. But you, doctor, are not. And then I remembered, so you're a Black girl. What? You have forgotten. You're not wearing your wedding rings. Your children were nowhere to be found. Your husband isn't here. Your degrees are under your bed. The things that would qualify you are missing here. So I need you to remember who you are in this context. And that can really break somebody. It can break you, especially someone who was born here who doesn't have the privileges that we may have enjoyed. But if that is the way you're treated from the time you enter nursery up until you finish university, what do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about the world? How much space do you take up?
Oh, I felt that one. I've had my fair share of challenges with the healthcare system, and so that resonates deeply. I do want to ask you about parenting because this is something that I know you've talked about on your social media platform. I think we also talked about this, how African or maybe Nigerian parenting can be very much I brought you into this world, I keep you alive. There are expectations. You have to come first in class. We're trained,
You're
as
right.
you
Yes.
said.
Yes.
Yeah. In your opinion, how do cultural expectations influence parenting styles, and what vision do you hold for reimagining the
Wow.
responsibility of parenting comprehensively?
There is what I know and what I experienced, and then there's what I think I
Mm,
could do, might do that might improve on what I experienced myself. And I do think about this often because it reminds me when I wanted to build like the first anti-racist curriculum in my
mm,
school. No one knew what it looked like, and neither did I. So it was brand new. I had this department that didn't remember I'm a black girl. I don't know how much they trust me. And I'm saying, we're going to do this thing. I've never seen it done before, but I think it can exist. And they're looking at me and I'm looking at them. But we built it. I built that thing. I built something that I had never seen before. And that's what I'm doing with my parenting. I have never seen the collaboration of these two things. I've never seen trying to do all of this reading, but still having these high standards. I have to believe that I can train my child, but still love her. I have to believe that the love that I communicate to her is a love that she will also understand. Because too often we tell our children that we love them, but they do not feel that we love them. What is this disconnect? I don't want that to be the case in my home. However, there are also things that this Western way of parenting tells me that I should accept. I think is absolutely unacceptable. I feel this tension, especially with my toddler. When this morning she was banging on the door and screaming, screaming, I thought to myself, if I was my mother, you wouldn't even dare to, even at 2 years old, you would not dare to scream at me. But what will that cost me? What will that cost us in the future?
mm,
And if I incorporate everything my mother did, I might not have the outcome that I
mm,
want, this imagined future that isn't promised, but might be. And so it's a mass every single day I have to regulate my emotions. I have to speak to myself. I have to speak to my God to make sure that I can at least try and do better. And, she might end up paying for therapy in the future anyway, but at least I can say, look at the books that I read, the hundreds of books that I read, I tried. I can say that I tried.
Oh, I love that. I mean this truly. My kid has a therapy fund
And
because I reckon in some capacity
something's gonna go wrong.
something's going to go wrong. But as long as it's not, something that really crumbles them. I
Mm,
believe in therapy and I want her to go as soon as she's ready, just to
mm,
process emotions, whatever it is.
mm.
But I often reflect on that as well, and some days I have to hold myself because I'm just like gentle parenting. you know?
And there's nothing gentle about me. There's nothing gentle about me. So how am I meant to do gentle parenting? To the therapy point. So I don't mind therapy, but I will be upset if you go to therapy for the same things I had to go to therapy for,
Of
because
course.
it means I didn't,
Yeah.
I didn't, I didn't, I didn't do the work properly. So if it's
Yes.
different things, unknown flaws, that's one thing. But if it's the same thing I said, actually, I wish I didn't have this, then
Yeah.
I would say I'd failed, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel the same. I think I cannot repeat the same harm in the same cycle. And I'm hoping therapy is just for maintenance, not and I'm hopeful. And this is why like I'm really trying to be intentional about this parenting thing and being a
Yeah.
mom and being a present mom. And I do want to lean in on that and ask you, you're a career woman and we're raising kids and we want to be present. How do you navigate that weight of what type of parent do I need to be? And at the same time, I also want to be a mom who goes after what she wants and creates the life professionally that she wants for herself. How do you move when you have that moral clarity? How do you move with freedom in how you parent and then educate at the same time?
That is a three-part question. I'm just gonna land where I land.
Yes.
I think that last week I thought to myself, if my child says to me, Mother, I want to be a stay-at-home mum to look after my family, would I be proud of her? Is that what I want for her? If she says to me, Mum, I wish that you'd given up your job so you could have been more present for us,
Mm,
what will I say in response? And I was stricken, almost grief-stricken by the idea that my child might pursue one path over another because I understand the pros and cons. If you say, Mum, I'm leaving my kids because I wanna pursue myself, I would grieve. If I said I wanted to stay at home, I would grieve too, right? And I do think there's a lot of unpacking to be done in the vilification of stay-at-home mothers.
mm,
I think while feminism has been a beautiful thing in so many ways, in other ways, this the rise of the girl boss has almost reduced what it means to serve your home, what it means to steward this beautiful gift of life that you've been given, this home that you're here to create, because I believe the woman creates the culture, but how can she create the culture in a place she's not really present for? And so as you can hear, it's convoluted. It's not straightforward. I'm still really trying to work out what it means to navigate this motherhood and careerhood. But what I came to when I was thinking about this last week was that I want her to see that I sought to be excellent wherever I was, and whatever was given to me, I did my very best, even when no one was looking. When nobody says well done to me, what do I accomplish? What do I achieve? Whose applause am I waiting for? And whether she decides to stay at home, whether she decides to go into the workplace, I believe that she will be the very best. And that's all I can ask for. I don't want the burden that I have in terms of what I think is right or what I think I should or shouldn't do. It doesn't belong to her. What belongs to her are the principles, working hard and being diligent and showing up and being consistent and being disciplined. I can do that wherever I am, regardless of whether I choose to stay in the home or be a career woman. And so I think modeling those principles is where I've decided to land and seeing what that becomes.
Wow, I really, really love that. As a mom, what are you holding right now? It could be emotionally, spiritually, what keeps you up at night, or what pushes you forward with a sense of urgency.
I guess what pushes me forward is that the world isn't changing quickly enough for me, and the schools that my child will go to are going to perpetuate the same harm that I experience. That what it means to be a black girl in the UK in schools has not changed and doesn't look like it's about to change anytime soon. That keeps me up. That keeps me going, actually. When I think about this kind of greater purpose, it's like I want children who look like my child to believe that education is for them. And I guess that doesn't, it's not really what keeps me up as a mother, but I believe I was a mother a long time before I gave birth. I've been mothering children since I entered the classroom, nurturing them, trying to help to heal them. And so this kind of purpose to teach, this really weighty purpose to teach online in the classroom, that is what is keeping me up. Like, how can I create something that I've never seen before? This is what is keeping me up. More specifically as a mother, like I guess we've said, like how do I make sure that I'm my best? I think part of being Nigerian is always wanting to be the best, but how do I make sure I'm not in competition with anybody else? But how do I make sure that you're not in competition with what I think you should be? There are so many things, but really it's that kind of greater purpose that how can I make sure that I, as they say, die empty, but you don't suffer the consequence of that because I chose to lead so many other children except my own.
Oof, that's heavy. Yeah.
Very, very heavy, very heavy. But it's a heavy question, in my
It is.
defense.
It is. Yeah, yeah. But like it's listening to you speak. It could be me just grappling as well because I feel it. Just that heaviness of I don't know, and I just hope I'm doing
Well,
right by
I
this
hope,
kid.
I hope
Yeah.
that you and I read something. I read this post that a woman wrote to her mother on her birthday, and I thought to myself, she spoke about how much she loved her mother and how much her mother had sacrificed for her, but also the closeness that they had. My husband asked me, "How do you know that you've done it right? What's your goal at the end of this?" And I said, if my daughter says this about me afterwards, then I know that I've done it right. I know that I've done it right. And it's a tall order. Unlike other people who are just like, oh, parenting, no one knows what they're doing. We're just going to wait. I'm not, I'm Nigerian. I'm not doing that. I'm trying to be the very best I can be in all
Yes.
areas, especially motherhood, because I only get one of each of the children that I've got, and they've only got one life. I cannot afford to mess this up. But maybe some would say it's too much pressure. I don't believe that the life I want them to live is not without pressure. So why would I relieve myself of the burden to make myself be complacent and feel good? I don't believe in that.
Right, right. Oh, that resonates. One of the things I've been thinking about for the past couple of years since I became a mom is that it is literally inconceivable to me that my child will have it worse than I did. I can't, it
Oh,
doesn't
it doesn't. It
exist
just doesn't.
for
It
me.
cannot.
It's, she must have it better. And that is, if there's one thing I do right in this world, it's that. She will not have it worse. She will not have it the same. She will have it better, and that's my goal, and that's, I can't
Yeah,
settle for anything
that
less.
is it. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I said to myself the other day, like, I want my children to have a playroom. That's what
Mm,
I think. And some people would say that's the minimum. I want them to have a space where they create. I didn't
mm,
have a creative space growing up. I've always said that's what my children should have. They don't have that at the moment. That's what I'm working towards.
yeah.
Because it's not okay for it to be what I had or less than. To be
Mm,
better. Or otherwise, what were we doing?
yeah. What's the point?
What is the point of all the books we're reading and everything that we're
What's the
chasing
point?
if our children turn around and say, I have the same trauma, I have the same outcome, the same grades. Like, I want it to be, I want them to be exceptional in the way that they can only be. And that doesn't mean that I want them to get all A's. That's not it. It's
Yeah.
what do you bring to the world? What is in you?
Yeah.
I'm here to just bring that out. And I'm going to do my very best to do that, whatever it may cost. And it will cost me. It's cost me already. To deliver a baby is no small feat. It's already cost me. I was skipping this morning to try and shrink this waist just a little bit. It's cost me already. But it's worth the sacrifice. I believe that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, thanks for sharing. I want to talk a bit about your classroom. You've created powerful school based initiatives to confront racism in
Mm.
schools. How can such leadership led efforts transform school culture? And what advice do you have for people who are wanting to do similar work?
I think that racism is still very much a dirty word. It's unfortunate that people are more offended by being called racist than racism itself. When you see the statistics about Black children or children from specific backgrounds, whether it be their class, where they're from, are having worse outcomes, we have to stop viewing these statistics as just numbers on a page. We have to see it as the harm that the teachers that we are appointing are perpetuating. Once we stop making this divide, i.e., the stats are over here, but our school doesn't do that, and start understanding that all institutions are doing this thing, we make it mandatory for children to be here every single day from the age of 5 to 16. We have a moral obligation to make sure that this space doesn't harm them. And if you don't think you have that, then I'd argue that you shouldn't be an educator. And if you argue that they're not harming students, I then have to point you back to the research. And so I guess my first response to your question is it is everybody's concern and everybody's business. That is what I would like teachers, leaders, educators to understand, that we do not sit outside of society and say this is that problem, but it doesn't exist here. It does exist here, and we must do something about it. In terms of the next steps, I would say the first thing is this kind of frank, honest, and open conversation led by a specialist. I don't believe it's the burden of somebody in-house, usually a Black person, by the way, to lead the conversation around racial equity. Because, like I said, I've come here to work. Why is it now my job to create change? I have decided that I want to be on the front line. But if you hear this podcast and you say, okay, well, who can do that work? Oh, we've got Beverly who teaches Spanish. We've got or Mark who teaches maths. He's Black. He could tell us something about racism. No, when we care about things, we pay for them. We put money behind the things that we care about the most. Actually, that's what I think. And so you take your money, you look at your budget and you say, I'm going to commit to spending X amount to make sure we are upskilling ourselves so that our teachers are not harming specific students who did not choose to be that color.
I'm thinking. I'm thinking of the responsibility that comes with in educating all kinds of children. I'm reflecting on conversations I've heard from teachers who say, oh, but a child is a child. And
Mm,
on one hand, yes, but then I'm like, no, because if you do not check the biases, the reasons you bring into that classroom, you might end up causing harm. I know young Black girls here in Norway who have literally told me that they said to their teacher that they wanted to become a pilot, and their teacher is like, come on, get real. You probably work as a nurse at a
okay,
elderly people's home,
okay,
and they
okay,
believe that.
okay.
It's maddening. So when I hear you speak, I'm also thinking about, I see how you take this responsibility quite seriously, but there are a lot of
Mm,
people who end up in professions where they get to mold the future and they cause harm. What is
mm.
their responsibility as well in unlearning and becoming more aware of the power that they hold? So I'm curious, how do you reflect on the responsibility that teachers have, even individually, to do the work that is required of them because of the type of responsibility that they have, and how what they say literally can make or break a life?
So I studied psychology at university, and I was told that in order for me to become a therapist, I'd also have to take therapy. I thought to myself, actually, more teachers should be in therapy. More teachers should be doing really integral internal work before placing themselves in front of children. I know some people are going to be upset about this because they believe they're completely separate. The person you are, kind of personally, and the person you are professionally are distinct. There's no overlap. That couldn't be farther from the truth. Actually, if you're going through a divorce, guess who you're taking that out on every single day? The children in front of you, unless you are a machine. And I'm not expecting you to be perfect, but you have to be aware of who you are and how you show up. You have to have this level of introspection and perspective from other people. You need to be making sure you're having difficult conversation with the people that know you most and love you most in order to say, who am I and how do I show up when I'm at my best, but also at my worst? There is work to be done. Like, yes, I'm a Black woman, but I do a lot of reading, do a lot of work. I was confronted with something so aggressive a couple of days ago in a book that I was reading about the way that we have to betray ourselves if in order for us to become leaders in the workplace. The sense of shame. Thought about how many times did I stay quiet in my youth to make sure that I could trammel up this ladder. But I named the shame, I named the emotion, and I spoke about it with different people, my husband, my friends. I said, wow, this is what it's cost me. This is how I've betrayed myself. It's difficult work, but it's important. So if I can do this, and I'm saying because of the world we live in and how I've been conditioned, I have to make sure I'm learning my beliefs around Black girls, Black children, people of various ethnicities. Why are you saying that it's not necessary? You need to do the work, definitely.
I'm thinking about back to motherhood, right? Where I remember when I was pregnant thinking, oh my gosh, I need help. I need therapy because I need to open the can of worms so I don't transfer it onto this child. And I constantly reflect, when I catch myself in the reaction of something I've said, and I think, could that have been said differently?
Yes,
What am I projecting in this situation? And whose responsibility is it? Because sometimes I find myself apologizing to my child, like, it's not you, it's mommy. Mommy
it's
needs to
me.
work out
It's
some
me. It's
things.
me.
And I want to think that teachers or anyone who is in a position to shape young people has that responsibility to continue to do the work. And the work requires a lot of humility. And unfortunately, a lot of people do not recognize the work that they need to do to be able to teach and impact positively on young children.
I think you're absolutely right. When I reflect on my own practice, I was always approachable, but I wasn't always humble.
Hmm.
I always led with love. I didn't always lead with humility. I have to give myself grace for that because that wasn't modeled to me in terms of teacher child relationships or parent child relationships. My parents weren't leading or parenting with humility, but they always parented with love. And so I gave that to my students. There were moments where I had to reflect on certain instances where I should have offered an apology, but I didn't. Why? Because I didn't think I had to. And so I think that we do need to lead with humility. We need to lead with love. We need to be responsible for our emotions. We need to be aware in the moment, consciously teaching. I think that's something that I want people to start speaking about more. Like, we talk about conscious parenting, but what about conscious teaching? I ran a poll on my social media account saying, do you think children should be allowed to go to the toilet when they need to? So many people said no.
What?
It's the shock on your face. It's the shock for me. I said the same statistic to a member of my family. They were shocked. Why? Because in the world that you live in, that you inhabit, people just go to the toilet. In schools, children are not allowed to go to the toilet outside of designated hours in some schools in the UK. They're not allowed. And I had teachers justifying it to me, like this safeguarding issues. They go to the toilet and they smoke and they do this and they do this. Is that the majority or the minority? Is it the control and the power that you want to maintain that is driving this? Because a few students getting up to no good in the toilet shouldn't impact a child needing to go to the toilet and not having the power to do so.
Oof. I mean, I've always thought that teachers have some of the most difficult jobs. I can't imagine that responsibility of navigating. It's a lot. So thank you for the work that you do and thank you for the
Thank you.
consciousness and the intention that you bring to it. And I do hope we have more teachers who think like you are more
Thank
mindful
you.
of how they engage. I think what you speak to of grace, I think grace is important. Things I look back on and I'm like, okay, I could have handled that better, but I need to give myself grace. And what matters is how I take responsibility and how I take accountability and do better.
So thank you so much.
So I want to ask you about how you shift between roles, right? Because you have this classroom role that you hold, your parents, and at the same time, you also have this media personality as well. As a person who navigates and shifts between these roles, how do you compartmentalize, say, for example, your online presence? Is it a form of activism? And what responsibility do you feel towards the communities that you reach digitally?
I'll take the question in two parts. The first thing is that I'm here to teach. I teach as a mother, I teach online, and I teach in schools. And so there is so much overlap. There isn't as much difference as might assume. Of course, the way that the style that I teach and what I'm teaching may be different depending on the audience. So my 2-year-old, what she's being taught compared to an adult, a senior leader of a school, very different, but I'm still teaching. So there's that kind of through line that helps me. I think more than anything is that I'm consistent. I don't pretend. So there's nobody that sees anything that I produce that is surprised by what I think. My students know what I stand for. The people I work with know what I stand for. My friends and my family know what I stand for. You could never play a video to my father and him be shocked at what I've said, because I've probably said it to him before as well. And so I think that that living with integrity and consistency in all areas means that you can just be yourself. You asked a question about like the commitment or the responsibility I feel to the digital community that I serve.
Mm.
I wouldn't say I feel particularly responsible. I feel that I need to make sure that I am sharing what I know to the best of my knowledge. So my responsibility, I guess, would be my commitment to learning. So I'm reading maybe 5 different books at any one time. I'm listening to podcasts. I'm having different conversations. I'm thinking about what I am teaching them. I never bring anything that I haven't thought about thoroughly. And I make sure I'm doing the work of evolving myself and becoming even more learned to make sure that I'm giving them the very best that I can offer. That's my commitment. But I think that's where it stops. I'm a stranger on the internet. You don't know me. I don't know you anything. You don't know me. You don't know me anything either. Well, how deep is this relationship where you can just unfollow me and I disappear? And so my responsibility is being the best that I can be. But I think that responsibility, I've already made that to myself. And I'm just bringing that to that space. I'm responsible to making sure that this is a space of truth and growth. But that's what I already give to myself. I don't think I owe anybody, particularly online, anything more than that.
I really love that perspective. I think as well, it also perhaps allows you to continue to create in a way that feels
Yes,
authentic to you, that you're
exactly.
not creating for somebody else's gaze
Exactly.
or creating
Exactly.
based on what somebody
Exactly.
wants to see, but you're creating based on what feels present and meaningful to you at that moment in time.
I really go with how I feel and what I'm living. We speak about authenticity a lot, but so few people are living authentically. Promise you, what you are seeing here is exactly what I am. I'm not holding back. I'm not pretending to be something else so that you find me more palatable. And that, of course, creates its own issues online. Why? Because people don't like when you say what you mean and you are unapologetic. People really can't stand that actually.
Yeah, yeah. How do you navigate that? Have you ever posted something that got a lot of pushback?
Yes, all the time. All the time.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But I realize, I think it's two things, isn't it? The truth is offensive.
Yeah.
It's offensive to somebody. And I'm not saying that all truth can coexist, by the way, which is how I live personally. If you say to me, this is what I want to do with my life, I'm never going to say to you that's wrong and judge. However, in this work, there are things that I just believe are absolute. Black children are at risk
Mm.
in UK schools. For some people, that is very uncomfortable. They find it offensive. They find it confrontational. And then they respond. And they often respond quite negatively. And so in terms of how I manage that, I have to take breaks. I'm careful what I post at particular times. I made a really bad choice to post something when I was newly postpartum. I would wake up to abuse every single day. And as a woman who's also given birth, you know how vulnerable you are in that time. I should have never posted that at that time, but this is something new for me. I have to give myself grace once again. I didn't know that, but now I know. And so I'm not afraid to post something like that, but I make sure that I'm mentally healthy. I'm well enough to cope with whatever ever comes. And I'm now aware of what the consequences might be. So when I want to post something about race, I say to
Mm.
myself, Joy, by the way, this is possible. And I say, okay, fine. Well, I'm not called to be liked. I'm called to teach. So let me just teach what I've got to teach.
Mm.
I think also we have to remember that we're dealing with the consequences of someone else's trauma. You see me online and you give me whatever you've been given. And you may not have done that work, or you might be doing some of the work, but not entirely. And so I have to also extend that grace. Maybe you're having a bad day. Maybe you didn't know people like me existed. So I extend that same grace to other people and I say, do you know what, maybe it's just a bad time in your life. But sometimes I do respond and I say, do you think it's appropriate to speak to a stranger in this way? Because I don't. And sometimes you have to reset the matrix. I'm a stranger. I'm a woman. You don't know anything about me. Why are you being so rude?
Mm.
And people like often makes people, oh yes, actually, because the online space is it's very peculiar, isn't it? We feel this closeness to people we've never met, this anonymity that we wouldn't feel anywhere else, where we say things and we don't think about the consequences of our words as we would if they were in front of us. And sometimes you have to remind people, I'm not your friend, I'm a stranger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I love the I'm not called to be liked. I'm called to be a teacher. And I love that. I think it's very reflective of the role you've taken on. And at the same time, I think how you navigate, say, the pushback, I think it's something we can all learn from.
Thank you.
So, question about wisdom. What is one piece of wisdom you hope school aged children take into their futures?
So I don't want to say anything too cliche. I want to be original here. But I think there is something to being who you are and liking who you are. And I don't mean that in a superficial way. For a long time, I didn't like how my voice sounded online. I didn't like the fact that I would speak about these topics and that I moved my hands so much when I spoke. I wasn't gentle in my delivery. I didn't appear balanced. I couldn't watch my own videos back because I didn't like what I saw in front of me. And so when I speak about liking myself, it's not in this, self-care, no, I'm speaking about really understanding there is no one that speaks like you and shows up like you, but that is your gift. This is why, it's what you're carrying. It's weighty, but it's good. In the Bible, it says God created the world and he saw it and he said it was good. You are good. And then the
Mm.
second piece of advice I would give is that you need to learn the rules. This is a game. It's been constructed. It doesn't mean it's funny. It doesn't mean it's enjoyable. But the way to move, there is a way that people move. You need to learn what that is, how to play it. And then when you get to a certain place, you're able to break the rules, break it so other people don't have to play by the same rules. You can learn those rules so that you can change them. So people like us don't have to learn those same rules.
I love that. That's deep. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
And so true. You have to know what you're breaking before you can break it. That's coming up for me, right? To the person out there who is a parent or maybe a mother, they're teaching, they are engaged in cultural advocacy, and they are also visible online. What radical permission would you grant them today?
I would say just keep showing up. Keep showing up until you can't. And when you can't, it's okay. You just keep showing up as often as you can, as consistently as you can, in all the places that you have been called to until you can't show up anymore. And when you can't show up anymore, understand that this is a tough fight. It's a fight that began long before you were even thought of, and it's a fight that will continue long after you've been forgotten. You just keep showing up until you can't.
Yeah, keep showing up. You've shared a bit about boundaries, how you protect yourself when you engage digitally. I do want to ask you, how do you care for yourself? What rituals, what anchors you when life accelerates?
I've never really been into self care. I think that's largely because of the home I grew up in. My father was a survivor of the war, the Biafra War, and it shaped him in ways that I don't think he often speaks about, but in a way that we experienced and still feel. And so the idea that one should take care of themselves in a luxurious sense doesn't resonate with me still, even now. I struggle with that. And that's me being completely honest. I don't think I pay particular attention to self care. I do pay more attention to survival. And I learned a long time ago that in the way that my brain works, the way that my mental health, what it requires, I need to have a very robust way of taking time to make sure I'm doing the things that keep me afloat. So that looks like meditating. I work out pretty much every single day. I have very clear goals that I like to, lists and things like that. My hair's usually done. and so are my nails. So maybe some people would call that self-care. I spend a lot of time with my friends, a lot of time with my family, and they are my anchors. And so I think, especially since I spend so much time online consuming images of myself, which I think leads to a really weird, skewed perception of oneself, vanity, that kind of thing. Encountering and engaging with people who don't know me, but know their perception of me and their assumptions about me. It's so important that I take myself offline and deal with people who knew me before I ever conceived the idea of creating content, before I ever became a teacher. These people keep me aware that I am so much more than the work that I've decided to do. And so between all of these things, I survive. I don't know if I'm taking care of myself. To term it that way would assume some intentionality around care, and it's not care, it's survival. And I really want to make that clear so that people listening know that there is a difference between self-care and just trying to survive. And I hope those who resonate with what I've said move from a place from survival to care, because I think we are worth taking care of.
Thanks for sharing. I mean, that resonates. But then when I hear you talk about, you meditate and you spend time with your friends and your family and hair done, nails done, I think, okay, that's caring for yourself. So if I may just dig a bit deeper, what would the difference be or feel like?
I think there'd be opportunities to rest. I think if my hair and my nails aren't done and I'm not working out and I'm not posting online consistently, not doing all of those things, do I still feel good enough? I don't know. I think there's a lack of care in and of itself. Like, do I care for myself? Because sometimes people perform these acts of self-care, but they do not love themselves. They do not care about themselves. Because if you cared about yourself, would you work so hard? You wouldn't.
Hmm.
If you cared about yourself, would you put yourself in certain positions? No, you wouldn't. So yes, your nails and your hair is done, but you work to the point of burnout. I don't think that's care. And then you say you went for a massage on the weekend and that makes it all right. It doesn't. It doesn't. So I think we need to be very careful about the words that we use. If we're putting a plaster over a stab wound or a wound that continues to bleed and we say, well, I'm caring for myself, I don't think you are actually. And I don't think I am. I think I'm doing things to survive, to keep me afloat, the semblance of care. But true care, radical care, is having better boundaries, giving myself grace, knowing when to say no. That is care. Sitting on the bench and saying, just as I am, I don't even have to open my mouth and I'm still worthy. I don't have to work to earn
Mm.
anybody's approval. If I never post a single piece of content again, I've already done enough. I think that's caring for myself.
Do you say no enough?
I don't know how to answer that question. My husband would say yes, which is why I'm a bit torn on how to answer the question. He would say I'm good at saying no, I'm good at having boundaries. But I think that the intensity with which I meet life, I don't think I say no enough, especially when I'm on mission.
Mm.
And so one day you and I will sit down and speak about what we've had to go through to put this podcast out, this episode out. I could have said, no, I'm not doing that. This is it. It's too inconvenient. It's not working. No, I wouldn't do that. And so I don't think I actually say no enough. If I believe that something is worthy of my yes, no, I'm going to go to the end of myself. And I often have.
um, I guess that's something we have in common because I also reflect on why am I doing this,
Like,
and
why?
yeah, and I end up at I'm doing this because I want to. I feel
I
like I
want
need
to.
to. I
I
think
think I
this
need
is
to.
meaningful, you
And
know.
it doesn't matter what it's going to cost, what I have to sacrifice to get there. Even if it's myself, even if it's my mental health, I will pursue it if I believe it's worthy. And that's why when you're asking me about self-care, I'm like, if that is how you operate in the world, how much do you care about yourself?
That's interesting though, right? It's
Mm,
interesting to grapple with that because I also really like how I operate like that. I know the things that are clear that I go for come with
sure,
me, and there are things I'm
sure.
just like, nah, not today,
Yep,
not ever.
yep.
Mm,
And I think that's the hard
mm,
part about this, isn't it? You like who you are. You like what you do. You like the outcome. And so even if it's costing you something, if you will always say it's worth it. And that's why we need to surround ourselves with people who will tell us, look us in the eye and say, I don't think it's worth it. I think it's costing you too much.
mm,
Women like us have to be careful, the people that we marry. We need people who are going to be a bit more like, oh, no, it's not the end of the world. Hey,
yeah.
not everything has to be met with this kind of intensity. Like, not the end of the world. But we only get to this point in our lives and have this conversation if everything, the things that we care about, mean everything to us. I don't apologize for that, and I don't think you would either.
No, no, definitely not. Okay, I want to go to a fire round. So the first one is, what have you learned about power? How it's held, how it's shared, and how it's reclaimed.
People don't give up power, you have to take it. You take it, and you take it
Hmm.
by force.
Hmm.
People
Okay.
don't give up.
All right. What are you still becoming?
A mother, I would say I'm still becoming a mother.
Hmm.
I feel like as a teacher, that one, I feel like it's just what I am. I don't have to become that. But the mother I envision, I'm becoming every single day. And unbecoming, if that's a word.
Are you enjoying it, the process?
Sometimes I find it quite confrontational when I think about all that is in front of me and all I haven't encountered. I think of my firstborn's teenage self, and I want to be able to forgive the things she hasn't even said yet. I don't know if I have that in me, if I have that grace,
Hmm.
and that frightens me. And so I enjoy aspects of it. But similar to the first exam class that I ever took through, just one day woke up and felt the weight of it. I enjoy when we're at the fun fair. Of course, I enjoy when she gives me a cuddle, but when she looks at me and tells me she loves me, I understand the weight of this. If I break your soul, if I break your spirit, I have so much power over you. I don't think I should have. You will spend your life trying to be just like me or the opposite of me, and I will inform every decision that you make. How can I enjoy something like that? But I do.
Hmm.
I hope you understand. It's like, when you live beneath the surface of things, as I'm sure you can tell that I do. On one level, of course, we went to the farm the other day. It's beautiful. We took pictures. But I'm also thinking about, how do I expose her to things in a way that makes sense? How do I educate her? How do I empower her? How do I make sure she feels she's loved? And these are things I'm thinking about all the time. I don't enjoy that level of work. No, I can't enjoy it. It's too much. It's too much for me to
Hmm.
bear.
Hmm. Hmm. I think that because I find myself also in the trenches, right? I'm doing this thinking, I'm navigating all of this, and I'm enjoying the time we're out at the park running. I want to believe, because I see myself a lot in you and how you process, that the fact that you're already thinking about this,
Mm,
it has to be right, right? That what in some sense already winning, in some sense already trying
mm,
to do better. We're not walking into this oblivious of the responsibility that
mm,
we have of just like, yeah, all a child needs is love. I think walking into something knowing
mm.
the weight, I think you're already winning. So I mean, just wanting to
Thank,
affirm that for
thank
you,
you,
the fact that
thank
you're
you
here saying this and grappling, I think you're doing a wonderful job already.
so much. That's so kind of you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm moving on to the next thing. And
Okay.
you're welcome. Very welcome. Moving on to the next thing. What are you aspiring to in your personal life?
Wow, my personal has become professional. I'm on maternity leave, but I'm
Hmm.
still on a podcast. So personally, I'm trying to make sure that my second born feels the intentionality that I gave my firstborn, but I'm giving myself the grace to explore myself and still show up for me in this new space. When I first became a mum, I didn't do anything that year but focus on being a mum. That's all I did. Every class, every excursion, I was there. Every book I've read. But this time I'm like, no, actually, I can give myself the space to continue to grow what is in me and what I am dreaming of while being your mother. And so I think holding those two things at the same time, like really exploring what my social platforms can become and what my dreams are personally, while kind of leaning into this role of a mother of two. I think that's what I'm kind of tussling with at the moment.
Thanks for sharing. If you could speak to the young woman you once were, what would you want her to know?
These ones are hard. These questions are harder than the other ones, by the way. They're meant to be quick fire, but these are me on my toes. Oh, young woman I once was. What would I want her to know? I would want her to know that people aren't going to like you. Not really.
Hmm.
And that's okay. You're not really here to be liked. There are some people who are here to be liked, and I don't think you're one of them. And once you're okay with that, you'll be able to attract the people who are meant for you and become the person you're meant to be. But the idea that you're here to be liked, just get rid of that. It'll save you a lot of heartbreak.
Hmm. Wow. Thanks for sharing. Who do you hope she becomes for the future that lies ahead?
I hope she become someone who can say that she did all the things that she knew she could do. There are lots of things that people think I do that I do really well and that I should be really happy, but there's so much in me that there's a younger version of me that's like, oh, you're playing it small, settled, being complacent. Come on.
Hmm.
She had big dreams, big dreams. And I want to feel like, yeah, you lived them, you did everything in your power to make them happen. And I'm really proud of you.
Thanks for sharing. All right. And with that, I want to thank you for your time, for so much knowledge. I think I will be reflecting on this conversation for a while. So thank you for sharing so honestly and bringing us along as you grapple with life and motherhood and parenting and also the work that you do. Really, really appreciate you, Joy. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I think this has been such a roller coaster in so many ways, but you have given me an opportunity to have really answer really questions that need to be answered, but I haven't asked myself. So I too will have to listen to this again and be like, okay, these are the areas where you're still grappling. These are the areas that you're growing. So thank you for bringing me into a conversation such as this.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you for spending time with us on Overnight Wisdom. If this conversation moved you, inspired you, or made you pause, please like, leave a comment, or share it with someone who needs to hear it. You can follow the show wherever you get your podcasts, and if you're feeling generous, a rating or review goes a long way in helping others find us too. Until next time, stay curious, stay tender, and may the wisdom you need find you exactly when you're ready.